We have requested an investigation and a change of policy for savings institutions because of Downey Savings and Loan's refusal to immediately honor and negotiate 2 bereavement checks given to Marc's parents by the United States military. Marc Retmier volunteered to be assigned to Afghanistan and was sent there in January 2008 as a Navy medic. On June 18, 2008, a bereavement team arrived at Joy and Stephen Retmier's residence in Hemet, California, and informed them that their son had been killed in action on that day in the War on Terrorism, Operation Enduring Freedom, in Afghanistan. As you might expect, Marc's parents and grandparents were devastated and distraught by the news and the sudden loss of their wonderful, heroic son. Marc was loved by all, and the local newspaper ran an extensive article about Marc's death and the devastating effect his death had on his family and loved ones. On June 19, 2008, the bereavement team returned to our client's home and gave them 2 United States Treasury checks of $50,000 each for a total of $100,000 as bereavement pay to help them alleviate any immediate cash needs that they may have as a result of the death, including to defray the costs of Marc's funeral. On June 20, 2008, at approximately 3:00 p.m., Joy and Stephen Retmier went to Downey and Savings and Loan, Hemet branch, to deposit the aforesaid 2 United States Treasury checks into their checking account so that they could immediately withdraw a portion of the funds necessary for Marc's funeral. When they arrived at Downey Savings and Loan, our clients were informed by the teller that the bank manager had instructed the teller to put a hold on the 2 checks until at least July 1st to verify, quote, verify the authenticity of the checks, end quote. Our clients pleaded with the teller to contact the military to verify that the checks were authentic and were delivered to them by the bereavement team, and that they needed the money immediately to make arrangements for Marc's funeral, informing Downey's representative that Marc had been killed in action in Afghanistan and that the funeral would be held on June 25th. These pleas went unheeded, and they were told that Downey Savings and Loan would not immediately negotiate their checks, nor would they alter their hold policy. Joy and Stephen Retmier were faced with a dilemma of not only having to cope with their son's sudden death in service to his country in action in Afghanistan, but also with a situation where they did not have funds available to bury their son and make arrangements for the family and friends that they anticipated would attend the funeral. Downey's refusal to cash the checks only exacerbated the immense pain and suffering that they were experiencing. Our clients were so upset at Downey Savings and Loan's refusal to honor the United States Treasury bereavement checks and Downey Savings and Loan's refusal to make any effort whatsoever to immediately verify the authenticity of those checks with the military, that they took the checks with them and went to the military recruitment office near the Downey Savings and Loan branch in question and spoke with some of the officers in that recruitment office about the situation. One of the military officers was so disturbed and upset at Downey Savings and Loan's refusal to immediately negotiate the 2 bereavement checks in question that she telephoned Downey Savings and Loan's corporate offices and spoke to someone there. That representative of Downey Savings and Loan refused to vary from Downey Savings and Loan's apparent policy to put a, quote, hold, end quote, on the checks and make no exceptions whatsoever, even though the military verified to Downey Savings and Loan's corporate officials that the checks were in fact bereavement checks. After Joy Retmier told her father, Dale Powers, Marc's grandfather, what happened at the bank, he went to the same bank on June 20th, 2008, and asked to speak to the management. Mr. Powers explained that money was needed from the bereavement checks to, quote, to bury my grandson, an American hero who died in Afghanistan, end quote. Mr. Powers showed the bank management a copy of the front page of the newspaper, which detailed the story of Marc's death and the family grieving his loss. Mr. Powers was visibly upset and raised his voice. He was told to leave the bank. My clients were forced to spend countless totally unnecessary hours trying to make alternative arrangements to obtain funds for Marc's funeral, which further added to the emotional upset that they were experiencing. Marc's body was returned to Southern California on June 24th, and the burial occurred on June 25th, 5 days prior to the, quote, necessary hold, end quote. It is shameful that parents of a child killed in action are treated by a regulated savings and loan as if they were potential criminals by requiring that government-issued bereavement checks be held to verify the authenticity of those checks before those checks can be cashed. Today, we filed a complaint with the Office of Thrift Supervision and sent a letter to John M. Reich, its director in Washington, D.C., requesting that he immediately conduct an investigation of this matter and adopt rules and regulations to be applied to all savings and loans and thrifts throughout the United States, requiring the immediate negotiation of any United States Treasury government check designated as a bereavement check. We also requested that he establish a designated hotline to be used by any bank official who wishes to verify the authenticity of any such check. No payee of a bereavement check should have to wait more than 30 minutes while the authenticity of the check is verified, let alone 10 days. No family, already traumatized by the shock of the loss of their brave son or daughter, should have their pain deepened by a savings and loans insensitivity to their loss demonstrated by refusing to cash a government check intended to help them bury their loved one. We look forward to his response.
I feel my son is a hero. He fought for everyone to have freedom. What they did to me felt like a slap in the face. It seemed like his death in service to... I'm sorry.
That's all right.
It seemed that his death in service to our country meant nothing to them. I have cried and cried over my son's loss, and they have just made it worse. They made me worry that I wouldn't be able to get the money to bury my son because I wanted to provide more than the military provides. Like a beautiful funeral site for him overlooking the ocean that he loved. I don't understand how they could do this to a fallen hero and his family who are experiencing so much pain and still are. I want to make sure what has happened to us at Downey Savings will never happen to anyone else.
When Marc was born, I retired. And my wife, Lois, I babysat for him every day. It was like he was my own baby boy. He was my first grandchild, and I still can't believe he's not coming back. I felt that the bank's refusal to cash a bereavement check showed disrespect to my grandson and to my family. Even though I showed them the photo from the newspaper of my daughter, Marc's mother, crying over his loss, they still refused to cash it before the funeral, June 25th, 2008. They said they would have to hold it until July. Downey Savings should be ashamed of themselves for what they did, and I hope they will never make anyone else suffer what we had to endure because of their insensitivity to us.
Marc was a true American hero. We have evidence that he knew his mission was dangerous and that he volunteered for that particular mission, his last mission, to take the place of another Navy military person who had just had a baby, a son. Really, just an apology from the bank is not sufficient as far as we're concerned. We really need a change of policy to protect other families from having to go through this in their time of grief. Just not anything that should ever happen again.